Your Humanities Half-hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Hapadays and Tiro, welcome to your Humanities Half-hour. I'm Catherine Perry. In June 1944, during World War II, American troops arrived on the shores of Saipan and Tinian in the Marianas to gain control of the islands from the Japanese. The battles of Saipan and Tinian were pivotal in the war due to their proximity to Japan, and the war eventually ended the following year. Well, beginning in June this year, the 75th anniversary of the battles will be marked with various ceremonies and activities here in the Marianas. And here to share with us one of those activities is Farah Younis, the Program Officer of our own Northern Marianas Humanities Council. Farah, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Hapadays and Tiro.
I'm so excited to hear about what you're going to share with us today, because it's going to make available to our community something that nobody has really ever seen before about our history. What is the Council's part in this 75th anniversary?
For this exhibit, the Council's part is we were sort of the catalyst for this project. The reason why we were contacted is the Council funds projects that support and perpetuate the humanities. What happened was sometime in late February, I had received a forwarded email from Don Farrell that included the researcher Alexander Astroth and 4 other University of Guam professors. They had been discussing this project since June 2018, and only in February it landed in my inbox. So from then on, it was a very hard push to make it happen, since the anniversary was coming up in June real quick. And then the work started from there. It was a lot of communication, and finally the proposal was laid out and clarified, and then the entire exhibit came into focus.
So what is this exhibit going to be?
So after much research and a lot of work by the researcher, it was narrowed down to 30 photographs and video footage or film of, video footage. The length is unknown at this time. I will not receive it until June 3rd. And it is a silent film, so unfortunately we will not get to hear the voices of our elders, but we will see them in live action, which I think a lot of people are very excited and interested in.
So these are photos and films taken from the period during the battle and immediately after?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes. They're photos of the summer of 1944, which at that time the battle was still ensuing, and then shortly ended after that.
Do you know the story about how these photographs and this footage came to the attention of Dr. Astroth?
Yes, he was researching for his book, which is now out. It is called The Mass Suicides on Saipan and Tinian. And as he was researching for that book, the photos surfaced, and he realized that they have just recently, about maybe 15 to 20 years ago, had been declassified. They were military photos. So the photographs and the footage were taken by the United States Marine Corps and Army Signal Corps camera operators, who were ordered to take the photos and footage during the battles of Saipan and Tinian. The images were taken by military personnel and created by the Department of the Navy and Department of the Army, and therefore were government property. Many of the images were classified and restricted for decades until they became publicly available at the National Archives and Research Administration in College Park, Maryland.
It's kind of unusual to me. I mean, it strikes me that, these things that were a part of our life and our history in the Marianas that we're actually very familiar with, many of us know this story, were actually classified by the U.S. for decades.
Yeah.
Like you said, they only recently became declassified. But for us, it's everyday life. It's part of our history. It's part of what our parents, our grandparents have shared about their lives. And it's only recently that the government has said, okay, we can share this now with the rest of the world.
Yes, I think they wanted to make sure there was nothing incriminating on there.
They dissected it carefully.
Yeah.
How does this project fit into the council's priorities?
Well, this project in particular, like I said, just sort of fell into my lap. It just so happened that it did. It wasn't. I don't know. It was one of those, I don't know, meant to be type things, I guess. It wasn't planned or searched out for, or it just happened. It was just a forwarded email that happened to morph and transform into this amazing project.
Now, you were sharing before the show that it also kind of evolved as you worked with the scholars on their initial vision for the project into what it is today. What are some of the considerations you had to make, and what are some of the changes that were made from the original vision for this exhibition?
Well, the reason why it changed so much, or not so much, but changed its focus and its size, I guess, or depth, is because the time. Like I said, it wasn't until late February that I got the initial email, and then it wasn't until late March, that it got approved to be a council project. And because of this, we had to sort of condense and kind of abbreviate a lot of things, whether it was the number of the photos and the narrative. It because of the time, it changed. The very little time that we had left to execute this. Yeah.
So I understand this is going to be a temporary exhibit, and so there is going to be a limited time for people to be able to see it. Share with us the details.
Okay, so the exhibit will be, the photos will be at the NMI Museum of Culture and History. Sorry, the NMI Museum of History and Culture. And then the footage will be shown at American Memorial Park. And this is going to be from June 12 to July 14. And then shortly afterwards, it will hopefully travel to Tinian and then Rhoda. So they will have their own exhibits. And then the photos will make it back to Saipan and will be housed at the museum after.
Oh, okay. So it's going to launch here in Saipan during the anniversary celebration, and then travel to Tinian and Rhoda, and then come back and be at the museum for an extended period of time?
That is going to be up to the museum. They are currently renovating and refreshing all the rooms. So it's going to be altered considerably. So by the time the photos make it back, we will see if they have a home to be exhibited permanently, or maybe once in a while.
Okay. I remember when I was on the committee that came up with the exhibit that's at the Visitor Center at American Memorial Park. And the first concept for the exhibit that the designers came up with was solely a U.S. military perspective. And as soon as we on the committee saw the sketches they had done and the story, like, you could just feel in the room that we were all thinking the same thing, which is, there's something wrong with this story. There is a huge part missing from this story. And we were able to educate the designers on what the story should really be. And so at the exhibit today, you can see that it's the American military perspective, it's the Japanese military perspective, and it's the local indigenous people perspective, which really makes for a very balanced, and I feel like peace-promoting type of exhibit. Did you have any considerations like that in developing this exhibition, as far as who your audience was, what the subject was? What was it you were trying to convey in 30 photos? I mean, I'm sure there were a lot more, maybe?
A lot more, yes.
What were some of the considerations you had to make?
Definitely. We wanted the actual narrative of this exhibit is the resilience of the Marianas people. We wanted to commemorate that. So these photos, They really show, they depict the families caught between the military forces and struggling to survive. It shows families, love, faith, kindness, and more. So this was sort of, the images were chose based on that narrative, that theme of showing the resiliency of the Marianas people.
Wow, that just makes me think of Super Typhoon Yutu that we just had, and how some people actually compared that to a war zone, and we had the whole hashtag Mariana Strong, and
Yes,
outsiders
exactly.
were commending us for our resiliency.
Exactly. So yeah, that's exactly how the proposal or the project developed, was speaking about that, and instead of making this sort of commemorating a war that took so many lives, it was best to focus on the strength of the people and their ability to survive both natural and man-made disasters.
Wow, that's a very interesting perspective we can take into the exhibition when we get to visit it. We'll be back with more on this exhibition after this break.
Did you know that you can donate up to $5,000 to the Humanities Council through the CNMI Education Tax Credit Program? Donations from individuals and corporations qualify and can be used to offset your local wage and salary tax, BGRT, and earnings tax. Call our office at 235-4785 to see how you can support humanities programs in our community and obtain a tax credit for your donation. Sizuus Maasi, Olomai, and thank you.
The Northern Marianas Humanities Council invites you to the 75th anniversaries of the Battles of Saipan and Tinian multimedia exhibit from June 12 to July 14, featuring never-before-seen photos and footage of the people of the Marianas during the battles in 1944. Photos will be exhibited at the Northern Mariana Islands Museum of History and Culture, and footage will be screened at the American Memorial Park. Join us in commemorating the resiliency of the Marianas peoples at this historic exhibit from June 12 to July 14.
Welcome back to your Humanities Half Hour. Our guest today is Program Officer Farah Younis of the Northern Marianas Humanities Council, and she's speaking about the 75th anniversaries of the Battles of Saipan and Tinian multimedia exhibition, which is going to be opening in June at the Northern Mariana Islands Museum of History and Culture. Farah, tell us a little bit more about the content of these photos. One of the first questions that comes to mind for me is, are they people that we're going to know?
Yes, yes, it is. And and that's what we're really interested in, is having people come who have seen photos from their elders and, from their family photos, and come maybe identify people in the pictures and also in the footage.
Have any of the people in the footage or the photos been identified yet?
No, not yet. Obviously, yeah. So, the professors at UOG and the researcher are not acquainted with the people here, so they're unable to put names based on faces, because the records, the labels or the captions for the photos are pretty much just very brief descriptions of the scene in the photo.
Wow, that is really exciting, especially for, anybody, but especially for those people who maybe lost people during the war, and there were no photos of them taken after the war. Of course, they might be the only photos they would have of these family members.
Yes, absolutely, because after this period, after the summer of 1944, shortly after, they were taken to the camps, and we had lost 2,000 people. And so, yeah, these photos and footage is probably the only ones existing of these people before they passed from disease, wounds, malnutrition in the camps.
What was your personal reaction when you first had the opportunity to reflect on these photos?
A bunch of mixed emotions, excitement to see them, pride because there are people, angry because we weren't considered at all during the war. We were an afterthought. any kind of survivors were an afterthought. So that's why about 2,000 people had perished. So just a mixed bag of emotions when I saw and some of the photos and knew about this exhibit and was working on this exhibit.
How do you feel working on the exhibit has changed you as a person, if at all?
Not necessarily changed, but made me more determined, I guess, to really tell the story as it is, a factual story, a historical story of our people, not some sort of idealistic type of story, more based in fact.
Is there any particular photo that jumped out to you, maybe more than the others?
Yes, there's actually a few. One in particular was of a young boy, a young Japanese boy, who his father was just about to throw over the cliff, but was shot dead by one of the Marines. So he was orphaned instantly.
And that must have been at like Suicide Cliff or Bonsai Cliff?
They did not say where the photo was taken.
You know, in this day of technology and everybody being online, you know, anything you want to know, you can just Google it and find it. But the special thing about this is right now, people won't find this online if they Google it.
That's right. All of it is just print. There's no digital version of these photos until now, until the researcher went in, scanned them, and is giving them to us.
So this exhibition opening on June 12th is really going to be a great opportunity for our people to see this part of our history. Could we talk a little bit more about the documentary that's going to be shown in conjunction with this?
Yes. So, yeah, I did want to say, so this exhibition that's what's called multimedia, because it's sort of, it's going to bring more than just one perspective. So the photos are going to be of our elders and people during and right after the battle. And then you have the footage, which is going to show them in live action, during and after. And then also the Witnesses of War will be shown at American Memorial Park, which is of our elders speaking of their experience. So it's kind of an all-encompassing exhibition.
That documentary has actually been around for a number of
Yes.
years, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it? I think I've seen it also.
Yes.
They used to show it on cable.
Absolutely, yes.
But it's been a while since it's
Exactly,
aired.
yes,
So
it's
this
been a
is-
while. So what's great about this one is, not great, but yeah, what's great about this one is you do get to see the survivors actually speak of their experience, how they survived, what it was like, people talking about being under breadfruit trees and getting shelled on, things like that. So you get to hear their story, and what's very unique is you see the photos, and then you might even see that in the footage, of them actually going through it.
Surprisingly, there are still people among our elders who do not want to talk about their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some who have gotten to the place where they're very comfortable talking about it, and we're fortunate to have them share their stories many times or in many different formats. But there are others out there who are just have just not come to the point where they're ready. I would say giving people space to share their story. And so if you have an elder who you are close to and who trusts you, and they haven't shared their story, you might approach them about it and give them the opportunity to be a listening ear, or for you to be a listening ear to them. And if they're willing for you to record it, because as the Carolinians say, in order to know where you're going, you need to know your past or what's behind you. So hopefully this might be a motivation for more people to open up and feel safe in sharing their experiences.
Yes, yeah, we are hoping that it would be. Yeah, because, I mean, I guess it is said that, healing is through sharing. So
I've heard that too.
yeah, so I'm hoping that, I know it's the experience just by seeing the pictures and knowing about the history, that even reading books like We Drank Our Tears and stuff, it's very, obvious that their experience is very traumatic, so it is hard to speak about.
Yeah.
I did hear of someone's grandparent who had been in it's a ship that sank not too far from here, and they were not able to speak about their experience until they saw the movie Jaws.
Wow.
And then they were able to say and tell the horrific story of what happened to him and his crew.
The council's part in the overall celebrations, of course, is primarily focused on this media exhibition. But I wanted to give you an opportunity, if you're willing, to share what are some of the other items on the agenda for the celebration, so that our listeners can have a little heads up and maybe make plans to participate in some of the other activities.
Sure, yes. So this exhibit is part of the events for the 75th Committee commemorative events. So, for example, on June 6th at 10 a.m., there's a proclamation ceremony, and it's going to be at the Governor's Conference Room in Capitol Hill. June 10 to 15, there's going to be film screenings at American Memorial Park and also the Tinian Public Library. June 11 is the Marianas Memorial Blessing and Remembrance. It will be at the American Memorial Park. And then we have the 75th Anniversary Multimedia Exhibit, which will be opening June 12. And then on June 14, you have the Walk of Honor, celebrating 75 years of resiliency. It will be a walk from the Veterans Memorial in Kilili Beach to Quartermaster and back. On June 15 at 11 a.m., the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Saipan and Tinian wreath-laying ceremony, which will be at the Court of Honor at American Memorial Park. And then on June 17th, Tinian will have their own wreath-laying ceremony, and that will be at the Tinian Veterans Memorial.
A whole slew of things coming up as we commemorate the battles of Saipan and Tinian. If people would like to reference this or get more information, where can they go?
I believe there is a Facebook page for the 75th Anniversary Committee. And also for our exhibit, you can go on to our website, nmhcouncil.org.
All right. Well, any final thoughts before we go?
I hope everyone from schools to everyone in the community, just go and see this exhibit. These photos and footage took so long, 75 years, to make their way back to our island. So please go out and see this exhibit.
Well, it sounds like it could be a real launching point for some very interesting family discussions.
Yes, and also actually for future projects. We are hopefully going to be working on one for 2021. And this one is going to be of the camps, the Chalankanoa camps, and also the one on Tinian as well.
All right. That sounds great. Again, we're talking about the 75th anniversaries of the battles of Saipan and Tinian multimedia exhibition, and it will be from June 12th to July 14th at the Northern Mariana Islands Museum of History and Culture, and it's organized, of course, by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council. If you have any stories or experiences from World War II that you would like to share, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us, as Farah said, on our website at nmhcouncil.org. We're also on Facebook at Humanities 670. This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.